Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
The wait is finally just about over. Football is back, and spouses and partners across the land have been put on notice that life as effectively a singleton is also back. Many probably breathing a sigh of relief, to be fair. On this, our first preview show of the season, we'll discuss and debate just how ready the Reds are for the opening day test at home to Brentford, and give you our projected Forest lineup. And of course, there'll be the scouting report on the opposition and the analysis pack from the resident Statman. I refer, of course, to Raf the Random Pundit and Danscape, who are both ready to go. So, if you have been here before, welcome back. And if it's your first time, hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Mr. Richard Spray.
The wait is finally over. The world's most captivating sport returns for another year of drama, intrigue, beauty and suspense. Football is back.
At last. Again, miscontrols it, and now Hutchinson and Mcatee takes over. Top of the knee, Hutchinson and Mcatee right for a shot. 2-0 Forest. Callum Hutchinson and Mcatee right. Rolls it to a one, it's gone past him. This is North Brown. Yes! 3-0 Wangi, and Forest have a third in the fourth minute. Yes, that's the shot into the bottom corner from the edge of the penalty area. Wouldn't you just know it? Here at the King Power Stadium, it's the Forest captain Ryan Yates who gives his side the lead after 60. Drive boy, dog boy, good dinner angel boy in the doorway, boy. Moreno into the penalty area, left hand side, time to the Violet. Yes, Wood's header. It's in. It's Chris Wood again. Woody. Fantastic run from Alex Moreno, and beautifully picked out by Morgan.
I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us off.
Well, I'm not sure about you boys, but I thought, what kind of intro do we need? And it's funny because I think it was yesterday on social media. I can't even remember who it was with, but someone was saying, you know, these are the tunes that I've got in my playlist ready for the new season. And of course, it's the City Ground playlist. And I said, I think we need to add a couple more in there. We got in a bit of a conversation. And then it came back to me today. I thought, you know what? That playlist has to be the opening intro for the season first preview. And so I've got the hairs on my arm standing up a little bit, and I think you guys are feeling it as well, because the season is back, the season is here. Richard Spray, how does it feel? Football is well and truly back again.
Yes. You know, it's just a dark time in American sports these time, you know, prior to the football starting again. So I'm so excited just to see what's going to happen, because clearly we've been so down in the dumps about the lack of goals, but I just have a good feeling, man. I know I told you this before, but I'll say one thing though. I'm a little disappointed, even though he's now the master of the digital frame artwork that is Danscape. I'm a little disappointed he's not going with the Callum collar up moment. So hopefully we'll get that before the end of the season. I don't know how many beers it takes to get that to happen, but but doing good, man. Super excited.
You're right. I mean, Danscape, hello and welcome. If you can't see, if you're not watching this live or in fact on the playback, there's Willy Bolly and a motion capture type frame behind Dan, and that's all I can look at, to be honest with you. But I tried incredible. My shirt, and
absolutely incredible.
How you doing, Dan?
Yeah, I'm good. Looking forward to opening day. I did the research though, and it is going to be 8 years and 12 days, I think, since we last won a opening day game when we play Brentford. So it's been a while. So yeah, not sure how much we're expecting to get out of this game based on that record, but these records are made to be broken, aren't they?
Was that the opening day fixture against Burton Albion that we won 4-2 or something?
It was a 1-0 against Millwall. And it was Barry Mackay scored that screamer and he seemed like a worldie of a player, and then he went on to do absolutely nothing after that, did he? But the good thing was, it was the same referee. It was Peter Banks who was the referee that day, and Millwall missed loads of chances. I watched the highlights back, and they had a goal disallowed by Peter Banks, who is the referee for this game. So there's got to be a good omen.
Well, if that's not an omen, I'm not sure what is. The Random Pundits here. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. The sun's back out. It's all hot. Football's cooking. It just opening game, but also suddenly, like we predicted, Paul Morley especially, but chilling out, and everything's hotting up in the transfer market as well. And it really looks like things are nice coming together. But that's not about really today. It really is looking at Brentford, but we might have a little cheeky talk about what other things are going on.
I think that's how we're probably going to start. And before we do that, let me just say to everybody listening and watching, we normally do our pre-view episodes live. This one is a pre-recorded one just to do with scheduling issues. I'm still in Poland. Richard's working, and the guys are busy as well. So this is a pre-recorded one. So I hope you enjoy it. Please do drop any comments, though, into YouTube, or let us know what you're thinking about anything we've got to say. I will start with the kind of breaking news. And by the time anyone listening or watching receives this transmission, this broadcast, it won't be kind of breaking news. But Omari Hutchinson, David Ornstein from The Athletic, has been tweeting. And now we seem to trust him more than anybody, because Fabrizio Romano seems to have lost his edge, I think. And so we turn to Ornstein. And so he has tweeted in the last few moments that Nottingham Forest are in the process now of agreeing a £37.5 million fee with Ipswich Town for Omari Hutchinson. Personal terms are no issue. The playmaker, I beg your pardon, Forest and the Ipswich Town playmaker both still have other options. So the transfer is not done, but it's ready pending final decision. So it's kind of, 95% of the way there. I'll interrupt kind of everything we kind of had planned and whack up an Omari Hutchinson graph. Sounded like I was from Northam. An Omari Hutchinson graph alongside James McAtee, who is also imminent. We are told that this is absolutely imminent. So Omari Hutchinson, James McAtee are on the verge of becoming Nottingham Forest players. Danscape, I'm going to switch straight over to you just to take us through these two players with the dials that you put together.
Yeah, I think they are very similar players insofar as what they would do for Forest. They're both going to potentially play on that right-hand side and possibly centrally and cut in onto the left foot. And they're both a similar profile of player in terms of kind of just their physical size and that as well. And, they're both quite silky players and natural footballers. So I think they are comparable. When the Hutchinson news first broke, I sort of thought it was almost a bit of a bargaining tool with Man City to say, well, look, we can go and get this guy instead. And maybe it still is. I don't know. I mean, obviously the fee for Hutchinson is quite significant. It's not like we're getting him for a bargain price. So, maybe we are just genuinely interested and think he's the man for the job. Very good. They're both good ball carriers. Hutchinson equally as good as McAtee in that respect. They both kind of play box to box. They get around the pitch a fair amount. What McAtee probably has shown a little bit more, and just these are comparing numbers on his time at Sheffield United, so it's similar to Ipswich, is that he kind of turns that into actual chances a little bit more than Hutchinson has in terms of creating for other people in the team. They're both decent finishers, not sort of stand out, but not bad either. So yeah, I think, comparable players. Clearly we're sort of considering our options, and they're both just all about potential, really. They're all about potential and what we can get out of them over like 3, 4, 5 years if they stay at the club. So either of them is very exciting, really.
Young, English, fitting a kind of profile that Forest now needs to think about when it comes to Europe, Raf. How excited are you about Amari Hutchinson and James Mcatee coming to Forest?
I'm more excited for McAtee than Hutchinson. Just hearing the Ipswich chatter, and I think it's genuine. Where weirdly they were more excited about keeping Leif Davis than Hutchinson, and I just don't want Leif Davis anywhere near our team. But
I think you're going to get
yeah. But Hutchinson, he's got actually looking at him, he improved over the under-21 tournament, and I thought he looked really dangerous. And I think if Nuno can harness that, and he can work with Callum, for example, and this whole kind of winger unit can work together, I think he can turn into something absolutely lethal. And the way that he can just cause danger around the edge of the box and actually beat a man as well. I think it's really, really good. And what's really exciting about this is if we just take a step back and have a look at what we've got in that kind of attacking midfield section. We've got Anderson, if these two come, we've got Anderson, we've got Hutchison, we've got McAtee, who were probably the three best players, maybe not, but in the top five, along with Elliott probably, of that under-21 side that have just again won the cup. To then couple that with Morgan Gibbs-White, who won it just beforehand, and he's come out of that. We then become a destination for England under-21 to go, do you know what? Ask to leave your club. Come to us. We will play you, and we will give you that mega jump up to a Real Madrid or a Barcelona or wherever it might be, and everyone wins. But actually hold your horses, because if we keep doing this, we're actually going to get better and better and better, and we might actually turn into that club that they want to stay with and actually be in Champions League and everything else as well. So all of it is so exciting.
It is. I've had to put my Prada eyeglasses on so I can read the screen because I'm on my laptop at the moment, and I'm looking for the shithousery Danscape for these two.
You're not
non-existent.
You're not
Where's
buying
the
these players for
shithousery?
shithousery.
Come on,
I mean, they're not bad.
expecting-
50% for an
Where
attack
do
is
you
not
think
bad,
you're
but-
going, shithouse?
Yeah.
Ryan, yeah.
Well, listen, they'll come to Forest. Ryan Yates will take them under his wing, and I'm certain that in no time at all we will have them both up in their S-housery stakes. Okay, we are going to get to Brentford. I promise you guys. That's really why we're here. But with so much happening, certainly this week since we established that we are playing Europa League football, the dial has been turned and all the deals are now starting to click into place. And so the guy that we were going to chat about from the very top of this episode is the breaking news from earlier today, and Arnaud Kalimuendo. Now, he is a French player. I think he's an under-21, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, Danscape. So I'm coming back to you again to give us some information. He's a Rennes player. And look, I've got to be honest with you. Again, I'll always say it. I knew nothing about this guy. But from what everyone else is saying, you know, they're losing their minds over this chap. Like, he is the hot property. Like, hot property. So why has no one else gone in for him, apart from Brentford? And is he really as good as everyone says?
No pressure. He's a good finisher. I think that's the key. He's a really good striker poacher. And the two charts here, like the one on the left is last season and the one on the right is the season before that. So he was 22 last season and 21 the year before that. I suppose just moving down the chart, the most interesting thing at the top is that he's played so many minutes in both those seasons at his age. He's played like over 80% of his team's minutes in the league, which is great for someone of that age, especially as a forward player. So he's been central to it. He's reliable. That's a big part of what you want from a young player. Last season, he basically profiles as a poacher. So he's a guy that just comes alive in the box. And you see that in his highlights. The ball breaks to him and he's very cool and calm and he'll just pop it into the corner like it's nothing. And that's, you know, again, that's good to see in a young player. What he's not offered last season is any kind of wing play, really. You know, he's not driving down the byline and crossing the ball in. He's all about holding the ball up, being in the box and finishing off chances. The season before that, though, he did show a little bit more of that. He did profile more as kind of that wide forward. He still had good finishing, not quite as good, but he actually had quite good chance creation that you can see sort of at the bottom of the right-hand chart. So he was able the season before that to actually bring a little bit of that and create more for other players. Still not really as a winger, but in and around as maybe like, just behind the strikers in a 3. So he's got a bit of variability, but, mainly he seems to be competing with a striker for a position, which is interesting because I didn't think we'd be looking to spend a decent amount of money on that role right now.
It's the kind of player that I was hoping we would be targeting in terms of someone who is just going to concentrate on putting the ball in the back of the net. And I know that he has got wing play previously up his sleeve, Richard, but are you like me a little bit when you kind of saw this name? You kind of like maybe thought, I'm not kind of sure about him, or did you actually know who he was? And therefore the excitement for you was, as much as everyone else. And is this now proper writing on the wall for Taiwo Awoniyi?
I'll answer the last part of that first. I would say yes, and I think that's a good thing for both clubs. I hate to see a guy like Taiwo leave because from a how he fits in terms of the dressing room, he's phenomenal. And as a human being, he's absolutely incredible human being. So you hate to see people like that move, Toffolo being at the top of that list, right? But at the same time, you recognize he needs an opportunity to play more football. He's just not going to get it with us. And he looks a little bit quicker. We always keep saying this, don't we? He looks more like himself in the preseason. Again, that's against lesser opposition in most cases, but he did look quicker. He looked like he had a little bit more acceleration back. And I think for him, getting an opportunity potentially to go back to the Bundesliga or go to another league on the continent would be good because he's still young enough to have a good career. It's just really unfortunate how things have unfolded with us. In terms of Kalimuendo, yes, because I think you guys probably remember last season, I was a little bit on the bandwagon for Brian Brobby, and not Brian Brobby last season, but the season before, he was very, really good in the Eredivisie. So similar kind of approach to the game, similar, physique and so forth, quick, agile in the box as Dan talked about. But it is really interesting to see that we're going after someone. And I was kind of thinking about this earlier. Are we doing that because we're still a little bit concerned about where Jesus is at? I mean, he's not been with the club that long yet, because one of his shortcomings, as Dan's pointed out in the past, is questions around finishing. And I just don't know if that's just limited based off of Botafogo not having a lot of chance creation, or if it's just him still learning that craft and he'll get there, because he seems like a very heady footballer. He seems like he's definitely got the work rate, and he'll put the time in to be better, and he'll be around one of the best in the business in terms of how to hold the ball up, dump it off, and be poaching around that goal in Chris Wood, and how you position yourself to be a better finisher. And so that's a good thing. So I think, but Kalimuendo seems a little bit further along that track, and he's done it in a very competitive league, which is a really good thing to see. So it's not a bad, it's a good problem to have, right? To have two guys like that who are kind of similar, but provide you with a whole different look in terms of how you approach the striker play. And, we'll probably talk about formation, things of that nature, but I definitely had him on the radar. Dan and I had him on our lists for strikers to give you a variation from what Chris Wood gives you in certain matches.
For me, I'm excited because all of these players coming in of high value and high quality, it says to me that we are really focusing on the Europa as much as on the Premier League, being something that Forest have in their calendar. We saw last year with Chelsea in the Conference League, especially, they almost put out a separate 11. I'm not suggesting Forest are going to do that, but we need to have depth in our squad. We need to have players that, can come in to either competition and slot into the side. You might see that one or two players are being used sparingly in the Premier League and more so in the Europa, potentially.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see kind of how Nuno divides his squad and who he sees for what competition. But I think that is definitely something that's in his thoughts and the thoughts of the team. Okay, right. So
we had another breaking news moment, by the way.
Oh,
McAtee deal is done.
Go for it, Richard. Go for it. Tell us what it is.
McAtee deal is done. 30 million. There's sell-ons clauses. There's a medical expected soon. So John Percy, that comes from Percy. So good source.
Well, this is it. And I was about to say, who's it by? You said the name. John Percy is the one as well. Romano is saying it. I don't trust him anymore. But yeah, James McAtee to Forest is done. Here we go. Deal agreed, etc. He's a player that we knew was coming. That looks like it's going over the line. This is Talking Reds. We are talking about Brentford preview in just a moment.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Indeed. All right. So Brentford on Sunday at the City Ground, and they're a team or club, squad that are going through lots of transition, and we're going to hear about their issues in just a while when we go to our opposition view with the Random Pundit. But let's think about the game itself, and let's get some first thoughts. What do you guys think about this first game of the season? And I'm posing the question, are Nottingham Forest ready for the Premier League season to start? And when I say that, what I mean is we know about pre-season. We know that we didn't score any goals. We know that we didn't get the players in really until we knew what competition we're in. How much of an upheaval has that caused? Are Forest ready? And do they have any excuses, Richard? I'll come to you first, as I normally do on this, and then go to the boys in a moment. But are Forest ready? Any excuses? And what are you thinking about Sunday?
Well, I haven't changed much from what I felt before. A 0-0 wouldn't shock me one bit, but at the same time, I recognize, and I'm sure we'll get onto some of this in terms of who is and isn't there for Brentford, and there's some key players that are not there. So that definitely works to our advantage. I think being at the City Ground, I think the boys will be motivated because they've obviously hadn't had the kind of preseason, at least from a output standpoint, goal scoring, et cetera, standpoint, other than they played brilliantly at the back. Sells was playing well, per usual, as expected. But I'm sure the attacking component of our team will want to prove themselves, and they'll be up for it, and the crowd will be behind them to help them, push them across that line. So I don't have any fear that, we'll be able to score a goal in that match. And I think but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's a 1-0 win or something to that effect, as we talked about the other day. So I'm feeling really positive about things. I think there's just now we're moving into a direction. We're getting some momentum in terms of how we're building the squad. But between what was going on with Morgan Gibbs-White, needing to get certain players on the team that contracts were closing, potentially, needing to get those folks signed and done so that we can move forward. Plus, as you pointed out, the situation with Palace that escalated. I think it was just a number of distractions, and clearly some of those things had financial implications. So how we wanted to try to develop the squad and do all of that and be prepared and have the depth and all of that. But again, I come back to, and maybe this is just an easy button moment, I still think Nuno has a bag of tricks. I still think Nuno didn't produce all that he was probably working on the training pitch. And I think he's ready to kind of start, accelerating things. And hopefully I'm sure the boys are ready for it too. And I know they're coming off a very high expectation now for what we're going to do this season, or at least a better expectation than what we probably came in with before last season started. So I'm just nothing but positive about where we are and where we're headed.
Okay, Danscape, I'm going to come to you and get your thoughts on Brentford. We know they've got, I'm not giving anything away by saying that Johan Wissa won't be featured, because it's been all over the news today that Keith Andrews has left him out of the Brentford squad. They've lost Brian Mbeumo, so, Christian Norgard as well. So, as I say, Raf will give us a full picture of their situation in the moment, but that does affect how Forest might set up, and it affects how Forest might perform. What's your gut instinct telling you on this one, mate?
I think it's still going to be a very, very tough game. I think regardless of who's left, they've got players that will want to come in and want to really put on a performance to kind of prove that they're ready to take over from the players that have left. I think that's what that they're good at Brentford, is finding those players that will want to do that. And in a couple of years' time, you'll be like, wow, where did that player come from? Obviously, now is a good time to play them, though. Whilst they're in this turmoil of new manager, players in and out and all that, now is the time to play them. So hopefully that is what decides it for us. The fact that our team that goes out there to start that game is going to be pretty much an established team from last season, apart from Dan Doy basically going into it, you'd expect. So we're settled. We know what we're doing. We've just got to go out and do enough on an opening day where, you rarely get brilliant games of football. We just got to go out and do enough to get the result and move on. And then we bed in some of these other new signings, and we progress, quicker than they do, because I think they will still have a troubled season with all the change, but I don't think they'll be as bad as, people are perhaps expecting just on the basis of who's left him.
Okay. So, Raf, I want to hear what your first thoughts are, but you've got more information to give us as well. So we'll give it in this way.
Send them back to East London! We send them back!
I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us off.
Scouting report with the Random Pundit. Here we go.
Oh, still a gem, that intro. Still a gem. Absolutely. Cool. So, yeah, a bit, kind of mixed it up a bit because we don't actually have any season data yet because it's the first game of the season. So there's a bit of a kind of look at kind of where Brentford, the known entity that was Brentford before that we know from last season, and how has that modified slightly. So if we take a look at the top right, this is the table from where everyone finished last season, and Brentford are in the middle there. They finished 10th. They got 56 points, right? Where does that put them in terms of, well, we finished a solid 9 points more than them, right? So that's a gap where we are. And like we said, we haven't changed our 11 that much, okay? And where they were they kind of in that middle pack around kind of that middle of the 50s with Crystal Palace, Fulham, Brentford, Bournemouth. And they were kind of around there. So already, if we go like for like with last season, we should be in a better position than them. And we've got a nice settled 11 just with probably one change. What you've got in the middle then is what Brentford finished their season up with their last couple of games of what they had, which is, if we're looking at it, it's a 4-2-3-1, which is basically what we play. So it kind of matches up. And what we can see is, if you see what the yellow is, that is on the screen, and I've highlighted up, those are the key first 11s plus the manager that have left. Right, so Frank's gone, Flecken in goal's gone, Norgard in midfield's gone, and Mbuemo's gone, right, from the right wing. They've all gone, right? So you've instantly got change in the team. Now, it might not be super change because they might promote people up from within their squad, and Brentford are very good historically at doing that. And I'll then just point very quickly at the bottom right, where currently they've got 32 members of their senior squad, right? Although 16 of them are under 21, but that is still more than 25 that are in there that they've still got at their senior squad. So they've got lots to be able to bring through. But naturally, this was their starting lineup as their 11. So if they're bringing up from within that were already there, that is logically not as strong as it was beforehand. Okay. I'll come on to the other kind of crude shadings and highlightings that I've done in a minute. But on that basis, then let's have a look then who's come in and where do they fit in, right? The only other notice, where's that gone? Not quite yet. We'll go to that in a second to have a look at how good they are. But the only other notable out was actually Ben Mee, who from midfield, and he was quite useful actually for them. He was the other notable out. They've got effectively 4 players that they've signed of any note, right? So very like for like, Kelleher has come in to replace Flecken, right? So, and ability-wise, you kind of go same ballpark, I'd say they're probably about the same, okay? So there's no massive loss there other than he's not as comfortable with his defensive unit, that they're all still the same that sits ahead. Now,
he's also been injured. He's been injured, I think. He missed their last
season. Yeah, that's the injury on that side. Yeah, so there's a problem for Brentford, basically. I'm just going through the layers of problems that they've got. So Kelleher's come in. He has been injured. We'll come on to the injury. So he's not used to the line that's in front of him. The line in front of him is actually settled because even though Kayode technically has just come in at right back, he was on loan actually from Fiorentina for the last 6 months, and then he's converted that loan into actually signing permanently. So Kayode is actually baked into that back line, which is as it is, right? So they've got a bit of stability in their back line. I'll come on to how good their back line is in a second, though. But so that is Coyote. So we take out Coyote, we take out Kelleher. So there are only other two major signings. Milambo is their big signing that's come in. He's 20 years old. He's come in from Feyenoord, right? He's Dutch under 21. He is an attacking midfielder central, right? But that's Damsgaard's position. So it's not like he's really coming into the side to change the starting 11. And also at that age, he's probably been brought in to be Damsgaard's successor, I would say, and they're very good at doing that. So he's not a starting piece of a jigsaw. Then we've got Henderson. Very famously, he signed quite near the beginning of the window. And he probably, well, it's a toss-up, who takes Nordgaard's place. So they've got Henderson, they've got Janelt, and they've got Jensen, who I would say are probably their three biggest midfielders, defensive, slightly different abilities of whatever they're going to do, some slightly more creative than others, that could fit that Nordgaard spot. Are any of them as good as Nordgaard? Is Henderson at his age still as good as Nordgaard? That is up for a massive amount of debate. So there might be a slight fall off in midfield in terms of that ability. Also, from that perspective, we'll come on to injuries and how limited they are and who they actually start. Okay. If we actually then have a look at Mbeumo, they haven't replaced him. They haven't really replaced Mbeumo. So they're looking within to try and replace Mbeumo. And the best they've really got is Fabio Carvalho or maybe their 18-year-old Rommel Donovan. Right. So those are really the only other options that can play and not naturally on that kind of right-hand side. So as it stands at the moment, they haven't even replaced their most important player. And that is actually a weakness on that side, because it's going to be kind of round pegs in square holes, as it were. So that's really, if you have a look at who's in. So they've already got potentially a goalkeeper. And a new manager. So a new manager who's within, but he's a set piece coach. So again, how is that going to work? So they've already got problems in terms of their first 11 being slightly weaker. Famously, which we've already said now from today as well. Big famous news for us. Wissa, not going to play, right? Head's not in the right place because he wants to move away. So he's now not going to start. So the natural replacement then is Thiago, who then comes in to then replace him up top. Now, he actually was not really that fit most of last season. So he is a good striker. He has come in, but is he Wissa level? The other issue they've got behind that is there's no other striker of any note that then sits behind that. So that striker is going to have to play for 90 minutes. If anything happens to him, there's no depth behind there. If we then move over to Sade, who's on the left-hand side, he also has got a knock and he's only got he's got a 75% chance of starting. These percentages are just for those that are listening. Injuries they've got: Janelt, 100% out. Nunez, who was an option they could have possibly put on the wing, he is definitely out, 100%.
He's
and then
a decent player as well, I think.
He's useful.
He was before he went there, and then he kept getting injured.
Exactly. So then you got Sade and Kelleher, who these are percentages, by the way, at 25%. That's my chance they'll play. That's the chance they won't play, but they've got a 75% chance of playing if you're looking at it from the Brentford side of things. But if you look at it, Sade, first 11, Kelleher, first 11, Janelt would probably be, I would say, in with a shout of being in the first 11 in that midfield slot. And Nunez is a key sub, or probably would be filling in from Mbeumo on that right-hand side. So he's also not fit. So if you look at it all round, they are seriously weakened. And how they got to 10th place last season was they were 5th equal in their attacking goal scoring in the league, but they were 13th for defence. Their defence is about the same, so it's 13th standard, but their attack is not 5th equal by any stretch, especially when you look at who's not being played because they want to move, who hasn't been replaced, who's injured. So from that perspective, we've got a settled 11. We finished higher than them in the league. We are fresh. They have got all types of problems with a new manager of how that's bedding in. But saying that, Damsgaard is still Damsgaard. Right? And he needs to be shut down and locked down because he is the key that makes everything work in this team. And there's nothing wrong with him.
Okay, fantastic. I think you had another slide you wanted to quickly present.
Yeah, very well. I say I do. A very kindly Danscape produced this, and this is actually on these two central midfielders, Milambo, who's more kind of that attacking, I would say slightly more attacking midfielder, and then Jordan Henderson, which we can see is that conductor, playmaker, who will sit more in midfield and just make things happen. If you have a look at Henderson, his wheel is strong, right? If we have a look at it from his Ajax time, playmaking absolutely exceptional, directness absolutely exceptional, progressive passing absolutely exceptional, ball retention absolutely exceptional, right? So, and this is not in a terrible league, Dutch league, not terrible league by any stretch of the imagination. So, from that perspective, he's actually still at his age got it. And to come in and could probably make a large impact if he comes in. And I would think with Janelt being injured for sure, I think probably Henderson would get the nod over Jensen and actually probably make it into that starting lineup. Again, is he as good as Norgard of what Norgard did for them? That's for debate. Milambo, although he's their top signing, if you have a look at it and the impact that he actually had, playing 65% of his minutes when he was at Feyenoord, senior minutes, he's that kind of all action impact. But you have a look at it, his percentages of looking on the screen of what he is for all action at 44%, impact as a 10 at 45%. None of them screaming like he's ready yet at all. Although he does have a massive shithousering at 66%. But other than that, his stats, he's quite good. He's good at dueling. His finishing is getting there. His box to box is getting there, but he's not as their highest signing that they brought in. He's not something who we'll probably see starting at all and maybe not even come off the bench.
Okay. Thanks for that, Raf. It's interesting to see Jordan Henderson back in the Premier League. Maybe he'll take the armband for Brentford. Now Christian Norgard has moved on. We'll be back in just a moment, chaps. Quick break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
I'm sure you know by now what to do. All the information for Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader, is in the bio. All right, so we've had a good look at the opposition. We've seen that they're going through transition. And I think now it's time for this.
I'm a Statman.
Fazendo som, Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som, e Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som.
I was wondering what was going to be at the end there.
I need to change that.
We are thinking, for those of you that can view the Statman video, you know, we have got another piece of video or
art, a piece of art
that we might include. I don't know. Richard was getting a little bit prudish the other day, thinking, you know, hey guys, this is a family show. Come on, you know. I can see that.
Phenomenal. It's like hearing myself speak.
You can always cut it.
To be fair, I did post. I said with permission, use it.
And I was
Dan.
like,
I know.
I was like, what the fuck?
Will you get Willy Bolly's permission?
We don't ask for
You need
permission,
Willy
Raf.
Bolly's.
You should know that by now. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. We move on. We have got the head-to-head. The Statman is here. Over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so again, we're looking at last season's information because we've not got any games yet so far this season. And these charts are looking at attack and defence for each team. Forest are in white and Brentford are in yellow. And this is ranking the teams across the last, since 2017. So what's that, eight or 9 years, seasons worth of data, kind of how the team last season performed against some of these things. And you can see on the attacking side is that I suppose from a point of view of scoring goals, the teams weren't too different. That's at the top there. But in terms of chance creation, Forest are kind of in that bottom 40% of teams for the chances they created last season. And again, this is Premier League teams over a number of seasons. So, there's a lot of comparisons there. But Brentford were in the top just outside the top 20% for the chances they created last season. So they were very good in attack, creating things, but what they lacked is obviously converting that into the kind of the level of goals they needed to compensate for some of their defensive side that we'll come on to in a minute. You can see the difference in styles on these charts in a couple of areas, which is possession. As we know, Forest didn't have a lot of it last time. Brentford didn't have loads, but they were in that just outside the bottom 40% in terms of the amount of possession they have compared to other teams in the league. What's probably interesting is our kind of shot intensity versus theirs. So because they've had that bit more possession, because they get a bit more of the ball, particularly in the final third, they don't actually shoot as much as we do. We are very much, as soon as we get into that final third, it's about creating a chance immediately, getting a shot away, and then basically getting back in, set into position. So we're a bit more direct than they are as well in style last season. Obviously, we don't know if there's going to be any major changes with a new manager coming in. On the right-hand side, in terms of the defensive side of it, Forest, again, the white line, if we just look on the left there, the S. Housery score is actually the highest across every season that I've put this data together for, unbelievably. I didn't think we were that much of an S. Housing team last season, but we must have been. And that's a compilation of like fouls, given away, fouls drawn, yellow cards and stuff like that. So we were right up there for that. Brentford were not. Brentford were, definitely not an S. Housery team, looking at the chart with their yellow line. The biggest difference on the chart is obviously just on that sort of bottom left is the average tackle position. And that's, again, where Forest just sat right off teams. Our average tackle position was pretty much on our own byline. We didn't engage anyone until they were very much right near our penalty box, whereas Brentford were on the front foot. They, like almost one of the highest pressing teams that there's been in the Premier League over the last 7 years. They were very much a front foot team, and they would try and engage quite high up the pitch. And I think when we look at the actual the top part, which is the non-penalty goals allowed and the expected goals allowed, you could see that Forest were better than them by quite some way. So their approach of being that high pressing team wasn't really working for them defensively, because they gave away a lot of chances and they conceded a lot of goals. They were in that bottom 40% of teams defensively, whereas we, as we know, were in the top kind of 30% as a team. So totally different styles of defending, and it kind of worked for us. It didn't work for them. Will they change it? Who knows? Be interesting to see. But that's the key for us, is going to be drawing them out to do that, so that it creates us some space on the break, which is how we beat them when we went to their place, and what we couldn't do at our place, because they were a little bit smarter that time in terms of probably not rushing out to us as quick. So that was that one. Any thoughts on that from anyone else before I keep going?
Please continue. Carry on.
Okay, and then so this one's just looking at the kind of skills of the two teams and the style of what they do, and actually not in a lot of areas that there's quite a few similarities, because I suppose we're both teams that have to do quite a bit of defending. So again, Brentford being the yellow line, so the box defending is similar, ball winning similar, dueling similar. Where there's a bit of difference again is kind of that they were a little bit better in terms of being, even more direct with the ball and progressive passing in particular. So, in possession, they were quite good at getting the ball forward in a way that we weren't last season, as much as we probably wanted to be, and that's where the difference in creating chances came from. But what I would say is, if you look at that Brentford team, and again, this is a comparison across 7 or 8 seasons of data, they're actually at the top for several of these things. You know what I mean? So they were one of the best dueling sides there's been in the Premier League last season. They were one of the best finishing teams, right up there with us. They were one of the best box defending teams and all that sort of stuff. They were also very good at set piece creation. So we're not talking about a team that's gone from sort of, they've got strengths that are still going to be there. Yes, they've lost some players, but they are not a team that was flirting with relegation last season and has now lost players and lost a manager. They will still be good at those things. So I think that's what we've got to be wary of in assuming that, they're now a weakness.
See, I hear what you're saying, but maybe it's because of my hatred for Brentford, but I absolutely think that they're going to be killed by losing Mbremo and Wissa. That's 39 Premier League goals they've lost. Losing Thomas Frank, I think, is huge. It is such a risk to bring Keith Andrews in, who's never managed a team before, let alone a Premier League team before. Now, yes, they scored some goals from set pieces last year, and that's possibly the only thing he's got in his favour because he was a set piece coach. So, yeah, I'm not writing them off as being this awful, awful team, but I've absolutely got them going down in the bottom three. I just think they're going to really struggle, especially when they haven't made any marquee signings. They sold him Bremo, and they knew he was going for a while, but he was confirmed 2 or 3 weeks ago. So there's 50 million or plus million, was it 65 million or whatever it was? They haven't spent it by the sounds of it. I know Raf was touching on players they brought in, but there's no one there that stands out to me that says, okay, Brentford are looking to solidify themselves. They've got a good record in the Premier League, like you said. But
you could have said that when they lost Tony.
That's a lot of change. Yeah,
you could have said the same thing.
But listen, they did lose Ivan Toney, but the guy they brought in, I can't even remember his name, he got injured and was out most of the season.
Thiago. Yeah.
They still finished 10th, so...
But they had him
they've got the players.
But the thing is, if you lose Ivan Toney and you bring in Thiago gets injured, that sounds like a problem. But when you've got Wissett and Bremo who've been doing it in the Premier League for a few seasons, that's what they relied on. They've lost both them players now, and they haven't replaced them. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, it is a problem. I mean, you can't turn your nose up at that goal tally.
I want it to be
no. I mean, we're all happy about this, but I would say to Dan's point, Wissa wasn't a marquee name either until last season. I would say Abuemo probably was. He was struggling to get on the pitch a little bit at times.
No.
Yes, he was. Look at his metrics. Look at his metrics. He did not score this many goals, mate. He didn't. He just didn't. And it was
before when Tony was suspended.
No, I agree. I'm saying in terms of the kind of level that he reached last season, which got him the contract he did. Maybe I'm misremembering, and Dan is welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure he's a little bit more familiar with it. But I do remember that his goal tally wasn't anywhere close to what he got last season. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean he was only 25 last year. If that was probably the natural progressive point maybe for him, but Wissa wasn't getting the kind of, I think, minutes that he got last season, and some of that was out of necessity due to Tony being gone. I mean, am I wrong? Because I seem to remember him being a little bit more of a backup. He still had the versulity, but he wasn't quite the household name that he kind of became last season.
My memory is that he was playing, but he was playing in a wing role, so there was an adjustment.
I mean, you could be right, but it wasn't the goal tally that he got. I mean, he really took it to another level last season, and that's good for them last season. And I don't think we saw that coming, right? Because I think there was even some conversation amongst us that would they be considered for relegation last season due to Ivan Toney, due to not knowing who's going to replace that kind of level, that role. But I'm glad that those players aren't going to be on the pitch on Saturday. Trust me. But to Dan's point, we don't want to take it lightly because they are very good at defending set pieces. So we're probably not going to have a significant advantage there. And they're good at getting goals from set pieces. So and obviously the guy who's running the show at this stage is also the one who is really involved in that part of the game for them. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm very confident that we're going to manage this better because, other than Damsgaard, you might make the argument that there's somewhat of a comparison and he's a little bit more controlled and a little less, there's this little less trickery with what he does, right? He's just a very heady, very smart footballer who does a great job in that role. As Raf likes to say, he's the engine. But I think if you start to look at a lot of the other pieces, matchup to matchup in terms of comparing and contrasting what we offer and what they offer, you'd probably say we have the edge, especially in that goalkeeping department, which on Dan's stats was very clear. But they're vulnerable to open play goals, but that's really not been our forte, as Paul pointed out. I think the other day, I think we've had one in I don't know how many matches he mentioned. And so they are a little bit vulnerable as well, not massively, but a little bit vulnerable to the counterattack. So that works in our favor. But it's still going to be a struggle at intervals. It might be more frustrating than we think, but I still think we end up winning.
Yeah, I agree with you. So how are we going to set up? That's the question I want to ask you guys next. So I've got the FOT mob, and like I say, I'm on my laptop, so I'm not quite able to get it into the screen how I like it. It looks a bit small, so bear with me. But what I've got on the FOT mob is basically the 4-2-3-1 that we would have expected us to play last season. And as I think it was Danscape touched on earlier, maybe the other guys as well, no Antti Elanga now, of course, means that Dan and Doy comes in on the right-hand side. So Williams and Aina and Marilla and Milenkovic at the back with a midfield two now of Anderson and Sangare, Gibbs, White, Hudson, Odoi Ndoye, and Chris Wood. I mean, that's the 4-2-3-1, Raf, that I've got on the FOTMob. Is that how you might see it happening, or have you got any other ideas?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of Jesus, right? He's basically played as many minutes as anyone. Sangare might be challenging him for that, but I genuinely think that is trying to get him comfortable with the rest of the squad as quickly as possible, playing with lots of other players. To be able to do that, though, I think, and just need to get Wood's fitness up as well at the same time. I just think us moving to a 2 up front, it didn't work last season. Wood doesn't like having someone else next to him. It just doesn't fit his style, I don't think. He just likes to lead the line of what he does. So I actually think it's a bit of a smokescreen. Well, not necessarily a smokescreen. I just think it was trying to get him up to speed, Jesus up to speed of when he needs to play, that he's more comfortable with people. It wasn't broken last season. Although we did get found out a tiny bit, but I think it was a mixture of being found out a little bit, but also people were playing with injuries. Everyone was knackered. Nuno didn't trust people off the bench. So I think we actually stick with everything as exactly like we have here, with the only piece that I think has changed is Alanga's gone and Ndoye fits in there. It's not like we actually, as it stands right now, maybe by the time this actually airs, all that's changed and we got 4 people through in like about 24 hours, 4 people through the door. But I don't think there are huge amounts of other options that we've got at the moment to change this up. And this is what everyone is comfortable with. Sangare or Yates is potentially the thing that switches up a bit more. I've got some interesting stats that we don't have in this, but might be coming at some point, where it actually shows the difference between Sangare and Yates is not that massive, actually, in terms of their outputs. But this is new Sangare, which I'm really excited about. So either than that, fullbacks, we don't have an option. You're not going to change Murillo or Milenkovic. Anderson's not going to change. Hudson-Odoi, there's no substitute for him. Gibbs-White's just on massive, so he's starting. And are we really not going to start Wood? Maybe Wood for Jesus, that might be something, but I don't see that changing. So it's really the same conversation we had last season, is who partners Anderson. Otherwise, it's the same.
What about you, Danscape? I mean, does this team pick itself because we haven't got players through the door yet that we want to have? Anyone coming in now is unlikely to be registered in time to play on Sunday anyway. And I can't imagine that anyone who signs tomorrow would go straight into the starting 11. So is this 11 picking itself, more or less? Can you make a case for a 4-3-3 or something else?
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty much this. I don't think there's too much to surprise that you do to surprise anybody on day one of the season until you've got your other signings in. I don't think there's any point playing 2 strikers because I think, as we've tried to highlight in the stats, if you're just going to put the ball in the box, they'll deal with that. That's what their centre backs are good at. They're dominant. They're big guys. So you're going to have to build the play and try and draw them out, find some space, and then use the pace of Ndoye and Hudson-Odoi getting in behind to try and create something that way, the odd long ball and something that's going to unsettle them as opposed to letting them get in and then just trying to lump the ball in the box. I think Jesus could come on and have an impact if we need him to. I think his movement will help that. But if they're sat in, it's still going to be, again, very, very difficult. So the key is the first goal, as ever. Whether it's Yates or Sangare, I don't really mind, to be honest. I think maybe it's the kind of game Yates will do a job in. But I don't really mind at this point. I just think, I think we go with tried and tested.
I'm with you. I think tried and tested is the way forward. Anything different from you, Richard Spray?
No, I can't deviate from it. To your point, I think Sangare, why I think he would be starting. I mean, I thought, Yates is going to give you the steady presence. He's going to give you the S-Housery, right? He may create difficulties for a player like Damsgaard. But I think, Anderson might be able to do a little bit of that as well. But I think Sangare's ability to, what I liked about the last match is he seemed to kind of, again, was very limited sample size in the last preseason match, but he looked like he was trying to get rid of the ball a little quicker, which is a good thing because I know that's been a bit of a worry. But his ability to kind of drop a pass over the top to Wood or do some sort, Dan said that's probably not going to be very effective, but his ability to find precision passing in small windows seems to work really well. And I think that will be an advantage for us and not putting so much stress on Morgan Gibbs-White at all moments to have to be the guy who drives that every second. He clearly has to do that the majority of the time because he is that creative engine that we need. But at the same time, it's nice to have a player like Anderson who showed a little bit more passing acumen too, I think, in some of those preseason matches, plus his ability to win the ball back and get the ball up the pitch quickly to a Gibbs White or to a winger will be really effective. It'll just be interesting to see. Are we gonna deviate from the left side being left side strong? Right? Is that what you said, Raf? Like keeping that 40+% of the possession that we do get funneling down that left channel, as opposed to like seeing a little bit more happen on the right with Ndoye, because he does seem a little bit more composed in the ball. So I'm excited to see Ndoye, honestly, in sort of in a different setting, in a different level of intensity. It'll be really cool to see how he functions in that way.
I think that the adrenaline, the buzz of the crowd, the afternoon kickoff, the sun shining, the smell of the Premier League, the smell of the grass, the whole everything just makes it go up another level. And I know that I'm probably saying obvious things, but I think for Forest, it really, really matters. It seems like we're a team that just needs that kind of level of occasion to really kind of get the juices flowing. And I'm hoping so anyway, because we weren't thrilled with what we saw in pre-season. One thing I am thrilled with is the news that broke from our good friend Darmesh, I should say, over on Sky today, when he said it looks like a new contract for Callum Hudson-Odoi is very close to being signed. And I think that is going to go down as a really important piece of business alongside Nico, alongside Ola Aina and the other players we've managed to keep, Matt Sells and Nuno himself, etc. So I'm really excited for Chris Wood to sign a new contract, because I think he's going to have a big season, and I'm really hoping he has a big season. I think that he can go up a level, and I think I've seen signs of that in pre-season. In a pre-season that hasn't been that magical, I've liked what I've seen from Callum in flashes, and I'm really hopeful that he signed his contract. He's got the number 7 on his back, and sometimes those kind of things for some players matter. I mean, it wouldn't matter so much for me, but I know that for some players, they just like to have that element of strut about them. And I'm the main man, and I'm one of the main men. And I think that Callum is that kind of player, and long may it continue. I'm excited for Dan Ndoye as well on Sunday. I really think that we can get really good things from him. But he's going to be under pressure. Amari Hutchinson coming in, and it looks like Bakra is coming in as well, potentially. So this Kalimuendo coming in at the front. So there's players in this team that are going to be under pressure, and that's how it should be. We want everyone to be fighting for the shirt. Okay, guys, we're out of time. I've got enough time, though, for some score predictions. So I will start with Danscape. What are you saying for your score predictions?
I don't miss this part, because I don't think I got any right last season. I will go 2-1 Forest, and I actually think Hudson-Odoi gets both goals.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
Based on your speech.
Okay, well, rouse some stuff. Random Pundit, what are we saying, Raf?
50-50 between a 0 and a 1-0 to Forest. And I've convinced myself with my own opposition preview that I'm going to nudge towards a 1-0 Forest, but go put a bet on 0-0 and cover myself.
Okay, I love your optimism, and I love your carefulness. My podcast partner, Richard Spray, what's your score prediction, mate?
I'm going to go with 2-0. I'm going to say that we get a goal from Chris Wood to start the campaign off right, what we expect. But I would also say that I think Dan Ndoye is going to get one in the back of the net and really electrify that and make his presence known. I hope that's the case, because he looked really good at different intervals for someone who hasn't had a ton of time, to prep with the team. So I'm excited about what he might bring this season.
Well, I was going to say 1-0 and Chris Wood to score. Then I was going to say 2-0 with Chris Wood and Dan Ndoye to score. So you kind of stealing my thunder a little bit. I've spoken about Callum being this player I'm hoping for big things from, and Dan's picked him out as a goal scorer. So all I'll say is I think Forest will win. I don't think we're going to concede. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could even be 3. It could even be that on this game, when we've been waiting for goals to come along, all of a sudden it happens and we pop our load and 3 magical goals appear from nowhere. So there we go. All right, guys, you've been legends as ever. we are out of time. And so thank you very much to all three of you for being part of this first preview episode as we head into Sunday with Nottingham Forest hosting Brentford at the City Ground. This podcast would normally go out live, but as I said at the start, it is a pre-recorded episode. So by the time you've listened to this, there'll be a day or two still until the match is coming up. So please let us know your thoughts. Please do hit like and subscribe and all the rest of it. Follow us on Apple and Spotify. One thing I will say as well, at the moment, we're having a few issues getting these episodes up onto Apple. So nothing's on Apple at the moment. So hopefully Apple regular listeners are finding us on YouTube or Spotify for the moment. We're doing what we can to get it back up there. Danscape, thank you very much.
Cheers, thank you. Enjoyed
and
it.
Raz, thank you very much.
Thanks as always.
Final word, Richard Spray.
I love Nottingham Forest. Come on, you Reds.
I think that's all we needed to hear. I love Nottingham Forest too. We'll see you soon.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Dark and Red.